Welcome aboard, space travelers. I'm super excited to get this story going. But first, I want to know, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below. Alright, let's jump right into today's story. The starship Ares 4 moved silently through the blackness of space. It was not a warship. It was a research vessel, long and thin, with 4 flexible arms ending in sensor arrays. Inside, the lights were low, the air cool, and the atmosphere was one of peaceful, professional boredom. The crew were Xylosians, a species known across the galactic arm for their calmness and careful study. They looked like large insects, with smooth, brown carapaces and 4 slender arms. Their captain Voral was older and more careful than most. His 2 long sensory stalks, which came from the top of his head, twitched slightly as he watched the empty space ahead. "Nothing new, Ensign Crete?" Captain Voral asked the young officer at the console. His voice was soft, a gentle clicking sound. "No, Captain. Just rocks and cold gas," Ensign Crete replied. "The resource scan is complete for Sector 7 Alpha. As expected, it's all empty. Just dead space." The Ares 4 had been out here for 3 long cycles, mapping the edge of the known galaxy. It was boring work, but it was safe. That was exactly how Captain Voral liked it. Safety meant survival. Voral was about to order a course correction to head back toward civilization when the ship's central computer screamed a warning. A loud, piercing alarm blared across the bridge. Red lights flashed everywhere, painting the normally calm faces of the Xylosian crew with angry color. "What is that?" "Report." Voral's sensory stalks whipped around, showing his alarm. Ensign Crete was already working furiously at the console, his 4 arms a blur of motion. "Captain, it's a powerful energy signature. Very close. It just appeared on long-range passive scans." "A ship? A pirate? Identify the source now." Crete shook his head, a gesture of confusion. "It doesn't match anything, Captain. The power output, it's massive. This isn't just a ship. It's a Class 4 habitat." The bridge went silent, except for the insistent thrum of the flashing red alarms. A Class 4 habitat. That meant a vessel so big and complex it could hold an entire ecosystem, maybe even a small city powered for centuries of travel. They were ultra-rare, used only by the oldest, most powerful galactic empires. Captain Voral moved quickly to the main console, pushing Crete gently aside. He brought up the data for the signal. It was strong, clear, and stable. And then the ship's internal AI did something no one expected. A new screen took over the console, flashing the word restricted in huge block letters. The AI was trying to lock the captain out. Voral, a veteran officer, quickly overrode the basic protocols. He knew the master access codes for forbidden data. With a few quick inputs, the forbidden screen vanished, replaced by the ship's analysis. The data displayed was terrifying. Signal source, active Class 4 habitat, self-powered. Designation, match unknown/forbidden. Originating planet, Terra, Earth. Species designation, Terran Deathworlder. Warning level, extreme. Unauthorized approach strictly forbidden. A wave of fear rolled through the bridge. The Xylosians exchanged horrified glances. "No way," whispered Lieutenant Zira, the security officer, her voice shaking. "A Terran ship? Out here?" Everyone in the galaxy knew the legends of the Terran Deathworlders. They came from a planet with brutally high gravity, an atmosphere that contained deadly lightning storms, and creatures that were impossibly strong and aggressive. Most species had evolved to be quick and intelligent. The Terrans had evolved to be unbelievably tough and violent just to survive their home. The Galactic Council had long ago placed a strict quarantine around the Terran home system. Their ships, especially the gigantic Class 4 habitats, were supposed to be banned from free space. They were too unpredictable. "Captain, we must report this immediately and jump out of the sector," Ensign Crete pleaded. "Protocol is clear. We do not engage with Terran activity outside the quarantine zone." Captain Vorel stared at the numbers on the screen. The fear was real, a cold knot in his stomach, but the professional scientist in him was screaming louder. "We cannot," Vorel said, his voice surprisingly firm. "Look at the energy signature. It is stable. Too stable. And there is no distress call. No outgoing messages. Nothing. It is just sitting there." He paused, then added the thought that truly scared and fascinated him. "Our life sign detectors read 0. The ship is fully active, fully powered, but contains no organic life signs. A dead ship of a notorious, terrifying species, far outside its allowed space. This wasn't just a simple encounter. It was a discovery that could change galactic politics forever." "It could be a trap, Captain," Lieutenant Zero warned, gripping her stun rifle. "A Terran trap could be a billion times worse than any simple raid." Vorel knew she was right. But the sheer size and mystery of the massive vessel was pulling him in. If he left now, the next ship that found it might misuse the technology or worse, hide the evidence. This was too big to ignore. He took a deep breath, the sound clicking loudly in the tense silence. He made the final decision. Set course for the signature source. Approach speed minimal. Passive scans only. We will not transmit, not even a beacon. Vorel looked at his crew, his sensory stock steady now. "We are only going to look. We are going to find out how a forbidden Class 4 ship, operated by the terrifying Terran Deathworlders, ended up derelict in this empty space." The Ares 4 slowly, cautiously began to move toward the massive, silent shadow waiting in the dark. The fear was a living thing on the bridge, but the curiosity, the true heart of any good explorer, was winning the battle. They were heading into the mouth of the unknown, and they knew it might very well be the last journey they ever made. The massive Terran habitat ship grew from a distant dot into a monstrous shadow. It was the color of old, deep coal. As the Ares 4 crept closer, the sheer size of the Class 4 vessel became crushing. "We are in close range, Captain," Lieutenant Zira reported, her voice hushed. "The ship is huge. It's not graceful like our vessels. It looks like a mountain built of scrap metal." The ship was terrifyingly angular. Every surface was flat, every connection point a thick, welded joint. It did not look like it was designed to travel gently through space. It looked designed to smash through obstacles. "Ensign Crete, confirm hull density one more time," Captain Vorel commanded. Crete ran the deep scan. "Captain, the readings are impossible. The outer armor is layered. The metal closest to space is a ceramic composite designed to withstand incredible heat and speed. Underneath that, there is an alloy of pure, dense iron and carbon. It's like a shell designed to protect against a direct asteroid impact." "Why?" Zero whispered. "Habitat ships are not frontline warships. Terrans do not trust empty space," Vorel said, his sensory stalks twitching. "They assume danger is always coming. They build a wall, not a shelter." The core mystery remained. The ship was fully powered, but the bioscanners registered absolute 0 life signs. It was an active machine with no pilot. Vorel ordered the docking. They aimed for a secondary access hatch, a massive reinforced door on the lower hull. The Terran airlock did not wait for their signal. As the Ares 4 secured its clamps, the massive, meter-thick door slid open silently. It was automated. They were still undetected. The 3 Xylosians, Vorel, Zira, and Crete, stepped out into the Terran ship. The change in atmosphere was immediate and aggressive. The gravity was a crushing blanket. Vorel's suit immediately had to use full power to compensate, pushing back against the Terran world's pull. Their home world gravity was comfortable. This felt like wearing heavy stones. The air was dense, warm, and rich with oxygen. Too much oxygen. It made their non-Terran bodies feel strangely hyperactive, a little sick. They were in a central maintenance shaft. It was a metal canyon big enough to fly their own small ship through. The lights here were not the flickering bulbs of the first corridor. They were solid, bright white squares set deep into the ceiling, throwing harsh, precise shadows. Note the construction, team, Vorl instructed. Everything here is oversized. The piping, the wire conduits, the floor supports. Everything is designed to bear weight beyond reason. They moved slowly, each step an effort against the crushing weight. They found their first example of Terran equipment. It was a heavy, blocky cart sitting in a maintenance bay. Crete scanned it. "Captain, this vehicle is not powered by anti-gravity. It uses thick, reinforced rubber wheels. And look at the chassis. It is solid iron. It weighs over 5 metric tons empty. Why would a maintenance cart need that much mass?" "Because it is Terran," Vorl repeated, his respect for their sheer brutality growing. "They don't trust anti-gravity. They trust simple, unbreakable mechanics. And they build vehicles strong enough to move anything." They continued down the shaft until they reached a junction. Crete translated the large, embossed metal sign. "Primary biome access. Zone of natural selection." "Natural selection, Captain?" Zira questioned, sounding deeply troubled. "That is a term Terrans use for their brutal method of evolution, where only the strongest and most adaptable survive. This is not a pleasure cruiser, Lieutenant. It is a tool for survival," Vorl said, moving toward the access hatch. "We need to see what they consider natural. Prepare yourselves." The access hatch was the thickest yet, a circular, triple-layered shield. It cycled open to reveal a glass viewing port looking into the habitat. Below them was not a gentle forest or a calm field. It was a massive, enclosed savanna under a bright, simulated sun. The grass was knee-high, tough, and the ground was dry and cracked. In the distance they saw what looked like a lake. But the surrounding ground was muddy and churned up. "Scan the biome, Crete. What is living in there?" Vorl demanded. Crete's sensors swept the internal landscape. His forearms began to tremble. "Captain, the life signs are reading hundreds, but not Terrans. They are large herbivores. Grazing animals, incredibly dense muscle and bone mass. And high-level Terran predators. Wolves, big cats, and something large with horns near the water. They have an entire ecosystem running to support animals?" Zira asked, aghast. "Why not just use protein paste?" Vorl leaned close to the thick glass. He spotted details in the dry savanna grass. Deep, three-toed footprints. And next to them the clear, defined print of a boot. A Terran boot. "They are not supporting the animals, Lieutenant," Vorl said softly, the realization chilling him to the core. "They are supporting the ecosystem that supports the animals. And that ecosystem is designed to be a perfect hunting ground." He pointed at a strange structure on a small hill, a camouflaged metal tower. "That is not a bird-watching station. That is a hide for observation. The Terrans built this world to hunt, to train, to run, and to kill. They are not hiding from danger in this ship. They are maintaining danger." The silent Leviathan was not a derelict ghost ship. It was a gigantic, perfectly engineered weapon, running non-stop, preparing its terrifying crew for a war that only they seemed to know was coming. "We need to find the command center and the crew logs," Vorl ordered, backing away from the chilling view. "If they are not in the habitat, they must be somewhere else. Somewhere, still." Captain Vorl and his team retreated from the terrifying savanna biome. The sight of the manufactured wilderness, designed only to sharpen the Terran predatory edge, had chilled them deeply. They were on a ship built not for comfort but for constant, brutal readiness. They needed answers. If the Terrans were not actively patrolling their hunting grounds, where were they? "The logs mentioned residential areas, Captain," Ensign Crete reminded him. "If the crew is asleep, their personal effects might hold a clue to their mission or their current location." Vorl led them through the central service shaft toward a large hatch marked habitation blocks. Tier 1 personnel. This area was slightly cleaner, the metal floors polished rather than graded. But the atmosphere remained heavy and warm, demanding extra effort from the Xylosians. They entered a typical crew quarter. It was a sterile, box-like room, but the items within spoke volumes about the Terrans. Vorl approached the sleeping area. The bed was not a light, anti-gravity suspension unit. It was a solid frame bolted to the floor built of thick, reinforced steel. The mattress was dense and heavy. The bedding, Lieutenant Zira pointed out, her manipulator tool hovering over a stack of folded fabric. It's extremely thick, almost stiff. Our scanners identify it as high-impact textile, designed to absorb tremendous force. Terran sleeping habits are intense, Vorl murmured, remembering data he wished he could forget. Their sleep cycles involve sudden movements, sometimes violent. They need strong restraints. They moved to a small storage cabinet. Inside they found what appeared to be personal data slates. Crete carefully picked one up. Captain, the security is simple, basic passcode. I'm in, Crete announced, relief coloring his voice. The slate contained simple personal logs and images. The pictures showed Terrans smiling, but their eyes held an almost painful intensity. They were images of fierce competition. Terrans fighting each other in the jungle biome, scaling the rough climbing poles, and wrestling with the giant, heavy wolf-like animals. Their recreation is combat, Zira noted, her voice flat. They play by fighting. Crete found a written log entry translated by the suit's AI. Day 481 of Cycle Beta. My rotation in the biosimulation was rough today. The new climate settings are pushing the oxygen limits. But the physical training with Commander Ava helped. We must keep pushing the baseline. Softness is death. Softness is death, Vorl repeated, the phrase chilling him. This was their philosophy. Their entire existence was a battle against becoming weak. They left the sleeping quarters and found the medical bay. This room was even more unsettling. It was brightly lit and spotlessly clean. But the equipment was brutal. There were no gentle lasers or soothing sonic emitters. Instead, they found powerful pressure machines, heavy casts, and thick, industrial-grade sutures. Crete scanned a wall panel marked enhancement and repair logs. Captain, the medical logs are detailed. They list severe bone fractures, muscle tears, and massive lacerations, Crete reported, sounding sickened. But the recovery times are impossible. A full, multiple bone break healed in less than 1 week. How? Vorl examined a large, complex machine that resembled a heavy clamp. The Terran biology is extreme. But their medicine is even more so. They don't just heal. They use biochemical injections to force regeneration. They rebuild themselves stronger than before the damage. He found a data chip sitting unsecured near the machine. He inserted it into his own suit reader. The chip contained diagrams of the Terran body. The diagrams were overlaid with lines and markers showing metallic and biological implants, dermal weave for extra protection against cuts, skeletal reinforcement cages around vital organs, and pain suppressor nodes wired directly into their nervous systems. They modify themselves, Zira realized. They enhance their natural aggression and density with technology. They are making themselves into living tanks. And look at this, Vorl pointed to a diagram showing the inside of a Terran skull. Neural focus uplinks. They allow the brain to process information faster, filter out distractions, and focus entirely on a single task, survival or combat. This explained the lack of complex electronics in their living quarters. Terran focus wasn't on external technology, it was on internal technology, making themselves the most sophisticated weapon. Finally, Crete's sensors picked up a faint rhythmic sound from deep within the deck plates. Captain, there is a pulse. A very low, slow rhythm coming from the lowest level. It sounds like a heartbeat, but much too slow and much too strong to be a single life form. Vorl looked down at the floor, the metal warm beneath his boots. The entire silent ship felt like it was finally breathing. Lead the way, Ensign. That sound is the answer to the zero life sign reading. The Terrans are here. They are not dead and they are not gone. They followed the deep, powerful rhythm. It took them away from the residential blocks and toward the ship's deepest core, a level marked only with the Terran word, cradle. The name was gentle, but the power pulsing beneath the floor was anything but. The crew knew the Terrans were not crew. They were cargo. And they were about to find out what kind of terrifying cargo the Deathworlders considered precious. The rhythmic, powerful thumping sound was growing louder as Captain Vorl and his team descended into the lowest decks. The sound was too slow for a normal heartbeat, yet too regular and strong to be a machine. It felt like the entire ship was taking a slow, deep breath. The path led them through reinforced maintenance shafts, where the gravity became slightly more intense with every level. The Xylosians had to work harder just to stand upright. This physical strain was a constant, tiring reminder of the Terran home world. They arrived at a series of massive open chambers labeled training and acclimatization zone. The first chamber they entered was a vast, open area filled with equipment that made the Xylosians gasp. It was a gymnasium, but unlike any they had ever seen. There were no sleek electronic systems or smooth, gentle resistance tools. Instead, the floor was padded with thick, black shock-absorbing material. In the center, there were complex metal structures almost like jungle gyms, but much stronger. They were designed for climbing, swinging, and falling from great heights. "Look at this, Captain." Zira pointed to a wall covered in thick, dark material. It was shredded in places, covered in deep claw and impact marks. This wall is labeled impact absorption. It's designed to be struck repeatedly with maximum force. Vorl approached a simple, terrifying piece of equipment, a metal bar that was curved, with thick, round weights locked onto the ends. Crete scanned the weight. This metal object is labeled barbell. It weighs over 450 units of Terran mass. A single Terran is meant to lift this and put it down repeatedly. It is for pure, raw strength. It's not training their minds, it's training their brute biology, Vorl realized. Their philosophy is that a strong body will make strong decisions. They moved into the next chamber, which was darker. This room was a large pool, but the water was strangely rough, with powerful jets churning the surface into a constant, violent current. The sign above read, "Aquatic Endurance and Rescue." "They swim here?" Zira asked, confused. "The water is turbulent. It would take massive effort just to stay afloat." Suddenly, the lights shifted and a holographic simulation began in the pool. It showed two Terrans struggling through the rough water. One was pulling the other, a wounded, heavy body, while fighting against the powerful current. The goal was simple: to drag the unconscious Terran to safety, using only their own physical strength against the overwhelming resistance. "It's not swimming for recreation," Vorl observed. "It is a simulation of high-stakes rescue during an environmental disaster. They train for the worst possible scenarios as if they were everyday life." The final and most unique chamber was labeled Genetic History and Ethos. This room was a library, but instead of physical books, the walls were covered in massive, flickering data screens showing Terran evolutionary history. The screens did not celebrate advanced technology or philosophy. They celebrated survival traits. One screen showed a Terran ancestor, a small, quick animal, being chased by massive, terrifying predators on the early planet Terra. The focus was not on the escape but on the effort required to survive. Another screen showed the structure of the Terran genome. Crete read the translation aloud, his voice full of shock. "The Terran genome is defined by rapid adaptation to extreme duress. We carry genetic markers for aggression, pain tolerance, and muscle density unmatched in the galaxy. We do not edit these flaws, we maximize these strengths. We are defined by what we must overcome." Vorl stared at the data. Most species use technology to remove their flaws. Terrans use technology and training to turn their flaws, their dangerous strength, their high metabolism, their aggression, into their greatest assets. The Terrans weren't fighting the outside galaxy. They were fighting their own weakness. The ship was a controlled environment to ensure they never lost their Deathworlder edge. In a sealed, clear chamber at the center of the room was a single, small Terran child's uniform. It was simple, made of rough, durable fiber, but it had a small, unique symbol embroidered on the sleeve. Crete scanned the symbol. It's a Terran crest, Captain. It means, custodian of the seed. Next to the uniform, a small holographic projection flickered to life. It was a simple recording of a Terran female, the same one from the half-melted data slate. She was speaking to the camera, her expression calm, but her eyes held that fierce, predatory intensity. We are the custodians. Our mission is not colonization. Our mission is preservation. The galaxy fears us because we are strong. But strength fades. This ship, our habitat, is a crucible. It ensures that the genetic seed of Terra, the Deathworlder, remains pure, hard, and ready for the next inevitable conflict. We are the archive of the dangerous. We must ensure the species never forgets what it means to be ready. The video ended. The silence returned, heavy with the weight of the Terran mission. They are not explorers, Voral realized, the truth hitting him hard. They are a self-contained ark. They have left their home system to ensure their survival philosophy continues, no matter what happens to Terra itself. The thumping beneath the floor suddenly intensified, a massive, slow boom that vibrated through the metal. Captain, the low-level pulse is spiking. It's stabilizing at a regular, strong beat now. Crete yelled. The source is directly below us. The area labeled Cradle. The archive is waking up, team, Voral stated, gripping his stunner tightly. We have seen how they train. Now we will see where they sleep. To the cradle, quickly. The three Xylosians followed the rhythmic, powerful pulse, diving into the final, deepest section of the silent Leviathan. The pulsing rhythm beneath the floor was now loud and undeniable. It felt less like a mechanical vibration and more like the synchronized beat of 1,000 massive hearts. The floor plates thrummed with the energy of it. Captain Voral, Lieutenant Zira, and Ensign Crete followed the vibration down the final access ramp. They were deep within the core of the forbidden Class 4 habitat ship, in a section marked only as Cradle. The air here was different again. It was cold, dry, and clean like the air on a mountain peak. The high gravity was relentless, forcing the Xylosians to move with slow, painful effort. The ramp opened into a vast, circular chamber. It was dark, illuminated only by rows upon rows of glowing pillars. The pillars lined the walls, stretching up 2 stories high, arranged in concentric circles. There were thousands of them. They were not storage units. They were stasis pods designed for deep, long-term sleep. And they were all full. Life signs. Massive numbers. Crete shouted, his voice filled with shock. They are all here. Hundreds of thousands of Terran life signs, all in suspended animation. That's why our scanners read 0 earlier. They were too deep in stasis for standard detection. Inside each transparent pillar, a Terran rested. They were dressed in simple, durable uniforms. Their faces were peaceful, yet their powerful bodies were held rigid by the stasis field. They were the archive, the seed, the terrible cargo the ship carried. This is not a crew, Voral whispered, staring up at the rows of sleeping giants. This is the entire survival population. The most dangerous people in the galaxy are sleeping, waiting for a signal. But the pods were not simply holding the Terrans still. Voral moved closer to one of the pillars. Ensign, look closer at the stasis fluid, Voral commanded. Crete brought his sensor close to the glowing liquid inside the pod. It's not just nutrient suspension, Captain. It's an active bath of hormones, peptides, and genetic stabilizers. They are being maintained at peak biological readiness. Their muscles are being microflexed, their neural pathways are being stimulated. Simulated? Zira asked, her voice tight. Yes. Look at the headpiece on the Terran, Crete said, pointing to a thick metallic band over the Terran's forehead. It's running complex data streams directly into the brain. They are in deep sleep, but their minds are running. Voral realized the chilling truth. They are not resting. They are training while sleeping. The stasis is not just preserving them, it is a hyper-efficient system for continuous, subconscious combat and survival conditioning. They are fighting wars in their dreams. This explained the steady, powerful rhythm. It was the synchronized, assisted heartbeat of the thousands of Terrans, being kept strong and ready by the incredible life support systems of the ship. The ship was their cradle, their coffin, and their infinite training ground. Suddenly, the lights in the chamber began to change color. The entire room went from a cool, clear white to an aggressive, urgent amber. Warning. Power fluctuation detected. Crete yelled. One pod is receiving a massive spike of energy. It's initiating the wake sequence. Every Xylosian eye snapped to the center of the chamber. There, a single central pod, slightly larger and more ornate than the others, glowed brightest. The amber light intensified, then shifted to a violent, clear green. The thumping rhythm of the whole chamber paused, then surged around this central pod. A sharp, loud hiss filled the air as the stasis fluid was rapidly drained and recycled. The transparent face of the pod slid up and back into the ceiling. A Terran emerged. It was the female from the training logs, Commander Ava. She took a huge, deep breath of the cold, dry air. She was tall, even for a Terran, and every muscle in her body was clearly defined under the simple black suit. She did not rush. She did not panic. She simply stood, absorbing the gravity, stretching her powerful limbs with slow, deliberate movements. Her eyes, steel gray and impossibly focused, scanned the chamber. Then they landed on the three small, insect-like Xylosians huddled near the doorway. She saw them instantly. The Xylosians froze. Their stunners were shaking, pointed directly at the waking predator. They knew they were hopelessly outmatched. Any Terran, let alone a commander, could move faster, hit harder, and absorb more damage than their small team could ever hope to inflict. Commander Ava did not move toward them. She simply stood, studying them like a scientist observing harmless microbes. Her expression was completely unreadable. No anger, no surprise, only calm, predatory assessment. She reached out a hand and touched the edge of her now open stasis pod. A small screen flickered on the side. Crete managed to translate the screen's single line of text. Alert status. Yellow, non-threatening external contact. She had detected them, classified them, and decided they were not worth the effort of confrontation. This was not a relief. It was the ultimate insult, confirming their complete lack of threat. She then looked down at the massive, smooth console beneath her pod. She touched a single, glowing button. The rhythmic, collective heartbeat of the entire chamber immediately slowed, growing even deeper and more powerful. The color in the room shifted back to a soft, constant amber. She was the key. She was the activation system. Commander Ava finally spoke, her voice deep and rough from the stasis, but clear across the communications channel. Report mission status, she commanded, but not to them. She was speaking to the ship's AI. The AI responded with simple, cold Terran words. Cycle 487 completed. Condition green. Readiness, 99.9%. Awaiting next directive. Commander Ava nodded, satisfied. She had woken up only to check the status of the archive, to ensure the deadly cargo, her own species, was perfectly maintained and ready for the signal. She looked back at Voral, her eyes conveying the simple, chilling message. My work here is done. You are irrelevant. The team had found the Terrans. And the Terrans were exactly where they were supposed to be, asleep but fighting in their minds, waiting for the day they needed to step out and remind the galaxy what a Deathworlder truly was. Commander Ava stood tall in the vast, thrumming chamber, her presence alone seeming to draw the intense gravity of the ship around her. She looked down at the three frozen Xylosians, small, frail beings in their reinforced suits. She had classified them as non-threatening external contact, and that classification was more terrifying than any attack. Captain Voral slowly, deliberately lowered his stunner. The metal was slippery in his grasp. He knew one thing with absolute certainty. Any attempt to fight, flee, or even communicate poorly would result in the commander, and perhaps the entire waking archive, ending their existence instantly. Zira and Crete followed their captain's lead, lowering their weapons. The silence between the four beings, one Terran, three Xylosians, was immense, thick with the weight of alien understanding. Commander Ava finally moved. She stepped down from the platform, her footsteps heavy and precise on the metal floor. She walked past the rows of sleeping Terrans, moving with a controlled power that made the air feel tight. She stopped near a console directly across from the Xylosians. She ignored the survey team and focused on the screen. She brought up a complex data visualization, a massive holographic map of the galaxy. Ensign Crete, can you translate the Terran data on that screen? Voral whispered urgently into his suit comms. Crete, his hands shaking, activated his scanner's translation matrix. Captain, it's a projection of current galactic military deployment and resource allocation. What is the priority? Crete swallowed hard. The priority is everywhere. They track every major force, every conflict zone, every planet with high-density resources. But the focus isn't on war. The focus is on risk assessment. The commander was not planning an attack. She was planning for survival. The entire Terran species, asleep in the cradle, was waiting for the moment the galaxy's stability broke. They were the ultimate reserve force, ready to emerge when no one else could survive. Commander Ava turned her attention back to the Xylosians. She didn't speak. Instead, she performed a sequence of actions that spoke louder than any words. First, she walked to a nearby locker. She opened it and removed a clear, insulated container. Inside, resting on a bed of ice, were several small, ripe red fruits, Terran apples. She took one, bit into it with a loud crunch, and began chewing slowly, watching them. It was a display of utter comfort and control in their terrifying presence. Then she gestured to the vast chamber of sleeping Terrans. She pointed to herself, then to the nearest pod, and then swept her hand out across the thousands of pods. Her message was clear, primal, and terrifyingly simple. These are my kind. I woke up to ensure their sleep is perfect. This is my duty. Finally, she walked over to a thick, armored wall panel and pressed her hand against it. The panel glowed red, showing a schematic of the entire habitat ship. Every defense system, every engine, every life support pump was glowing green, active, ready. She then pointed at the Xylosians, then back at the green schematic, and then she made a sharp, clean motion with her hand, a simple slicing motion like cutting a wire. Voral understood the unspoken warning instantly. You are non-threatening. But if you touch, disturb, or attempt to disable any system on this ship, I will cut you apart. The unspoken understanding was complete. This ship was a sanctuary, a school of hard knocks, and a genetic fortress. The Xylosians had stumbled upon not a derelict, but a species that had perfected the art of hibernation readiness. The Terrans were the sleeping giant, only waking to check that their power was still absolute. Captain Voral knew they had everything they needed. They had the evidence of the Terran mission, their biology, and their horrifying level of preparation. They did not need to fight, and they absolutely could not stay. Voral raised his hands slightly in a non-aggressive gesture common across the galaxy, a sign of respect and departure. We have seen your readiness, Commander. Voral broadcast on the emergency frequency, hoping she was monitoring. We mean no harm. We are leaving the Forbidden Zone now. Commander Ava gave no verbal confirmation. She simply watched them. But her intense gaze relaxed slightly, acknowledging the Xylosian captain's choice. She had won not with a weapon, but with the quiet display of her species' terrifying dedication. Voral gave the order, Team, silent retreat. Do not look away. Do not make a sudden move. Back to the airlock now. The three Xylosians backed slowly out of the gigantic cradle chamber, their eyes locked on the commander. She remained standing by the console, chewing her fruit, radiating primal power. She didn't follow. She didn't even turn her head. Her attention had already moved on to the next data point. The Xylosians returned to the Ares 4. The docking clamps released, and the survey vessel backed away from the colossal, dark hull of the habitat ship. On the bridge, the crew was shaken but alive. "Captain, should we report the location?" Crete asked, his voice still trembling. "The Council needs to know the Terrans have an active survival arc in free space." Vorl settled into his chair, the weight of the Terran gravity finally lifting from his body. He looked at the massive, silent shape receding on the view screen. "No," Vorl said, his sensory stalk steady. "The Council fears them because they are unpredictable. But what we saw was not chaos. It was pure, terrifying dedication to survival." He paused, then issued his final order. "We classify this contact as unconfirmed anomaly. We will erase all non-physical data of the Terran internal systems. We leave them their sleep." The Ares 4 turned and engaged its drive, leaving the terrifying, dark shadow behind. The final shot on the screen was the habitat ship, now looking less like a mountain and more like a massive, unsleeping sentinel. It carried its precious cargo, the Terran Deathworlders, who were fighting their war in silence, in their sleep, ready to wake up and remind the universe that soft species die, but the hardest, most resilient life finds a way to endure no matter the cost.